Hello, everyone. I am going to try to keep this short since I know you guys have a whole lot coming at you, and many of you have not ever been full time online students. And coming from me, I would say it's a big adjustment. You guys just need to make sure that you set up a learning schedule. So, for the classes that you normally have class time for, I would try to do all of your homework during that time, and it will really help to keep you guys on track. As always, if you have trouble with anything on the Canvas shell, email me. I'm going to be on my phone a lot more checking emails. All right, so I wanted to go over your guys' exam because I didn't think it was fair to just ignore it. But also, I'm not going to spend the time right now to scan 8 individual pages for over 20 of you. Got a lot of work on my end too, trying to keep everything up for you guys as far as online goes. So if you have specific questions, email me and I'll look your stuff up. All right. Okay. So first of all, I want to say congratulations. So far of the 5 semesters that I've been teaching this class, you guys have scored the highest on the first exam. And this was a bigger exam than I usually do. I usually break it up into 3. So 81% of you scored C or better, which is way higher than the normal bell curve. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Typically, only 50% are going to be average or higher, and then 50% are going to be average or lower, with the majority of people they expect to get C's, even fewer B's, and even fewer A's. But if you guys look up here, this is grads included. We have a lot more going on for the upper end and a lot less on the lower end. I'd fill in what are the metabolic demands of the sport, meaning what kind of energy systems are they using? Is it a 6-second play? Are they running for 30 minutes? Is it oxidative? Is it anaerobic? And then what are the biomechanical demands of the sport? Basically, what are the movement patterns? And then what are the common injuries? Moving on. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I've already lectured on this before. But if you have questions, write them down and email me. All right, primary energy systems. The fastest one is the phosphagen. Then we've got glycolytic. That's more 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Then oxidative. I accepted it if you put aerobic. If you put anaerobic for either of those, I did not, because technically both are anaerobic, but you needed to specify which energy system. A couple of you got this wrong on the grad side. 2 minutes or over, which I get it. It's tricky because this last one is 2 minutes, but technically speaking, you're not fully there until you're at the 3-minute mark. All right, testing order. Most of you guys did a good job. You all remembered the NAMMSLFA. So we have non-fatiguing first, which includes balance, flexibility, body composition. Vertical jump also works there. Second is agility. So T-test, 505. Number 3, max power, clean or snatch. Max strength. Again, vertical jump could have worked there too. Max strength, squat, bench, sprint. Basically anything under 100 yards. 10, local muscular endurance, YMCA, bench press, push-up, etc. A lot of you guys put some random things. They technically have to be an NSCA test. So I could say squats to failure, but that doesn't mean anything to me because there's no set guidelines for it. And me and a different strength coach could set that up completely differently. All right, 7, fatiguing anaerobic capacity tests. 300-yard sprint, suicides, beep tests, that all works there. 8, aerobic capacity test, so VO2 max, 1.5 mile run, anything endurance based. All right, 3 factors you should standardize before a test. Most of you guys got this. A few of you guys said some things like gender, the weight that you're using. You can't really standardize someone's gender. They are what they are, whatever they identify as. You know if you're going to have females or males coming in to test. And the same goes with the actual test that you're using. They're already standardized. The things that you have to worry about standardizing that are not normal or that are not the same from day to day are things like the temperature of the building, the humidity levels, the type of equipment that you're using, meaning if you use a hex bar for a deadlift one day or a conventional bar the other day, that's not really the same. Level of athlete fatigue. So did they have practice? Did they have a game? Time of day, what they ate, and then the warm-up. All right, general adaptation syndrome. There are technically 4 stages. So the first one is your alarm stage. The second one is resistance. Your body is fighting back to try to adjust to the stress. Supercompensation is the third one, where we hope that we land with adaptation. And then that final stage, which you wouldn't necessarily hit if you're programming appropriately and your athlete is adapting appropriately. It's not technically a fourth stage. Basically, everyone's going to hit stage 1, stage 2, and then they'll either end up in stage 3 or stage 4. So that's just kind of the option there. All right, so imagine this imaginary line. This is my normal baseline. I get a little bump here, so that alarm. My body's fighting it. Resistance, that curve drops down. Then if I supercompensate, it pops back up, and my baseline is higher here than it was here. If it doesn't, it goes from here, alarm stage, resistance, yeah, and then exhaustion. That line goes down. All right, linear versus nonlinear periodization. Most of you guys did a good job doing this. The two variables I was looking for was intensity and volume. So they're inversely related here over a long period of time. So volume starts high in that general preparatory phase, goes down, intensity starts low and goes high. Then here it's ebbing and flowing. We're going up and down. There's a lot more changes. Some of you guys said it's unplanned, which is not actually true. It's still planned. There's just more fluctuations. Oops, sorry, I'll go back. Nonlinear is better for advanced athletes that need more of a stimulus to kind of surprise and shock their body to adapt to. This is really good. The basic linear is really good for newer athletes. And eventually, nonlinear does become linear because you're still making progressions, just like you'd be making progressions here. But what got you to your 200-pound back squat, let's say you're new, is not going to get you to your 400-pound back squat. You're going to have to vary it once you have an advanced training age. Okay, warm up. The ramp. Most of you guys got this. Raise, activate and mobilize, and potentiate. So raise is just raising body temperature, heart rate, blood flow, blood pressure. So jogging, things like that. Activate and mobilize. Think of things like glute bridges. Anything with a band activates. Mobilization, hip openers, world's greatest, things like that. And then potentiation is normally a little bit more power and explosive. It's just getting your body ready and prepped for what you're going to do. So that could technically even be warming up with the barbell. All right. Phases, reps or less. Okay, most of you guys got this. A few of you got it wrong. It was exactly like this on the PowerPoint that I had. Exercise order. Power first. It's the most neurologically demanding and the most specific. Then you have strength. Then you have accessory. A few more points on programming. 7 primal movements. These typically fall under this category to the right. Those are NSTA categories. So primal movements are things such as gait, walking, twist, Russian twists, pull, typically upper body, push, upper body. Bend is hip hinging, so like a deadlift. Then we have a lunge, unilateral lower body push, and then a squat, bilateral lower body push. All right, 2 Olympic lifting lifts. Clean and jerk, snatch. The clean and jerk might be confusing because it sounds like it's 2 movements. When you're training, you might train them separately, but for the event, you're going to do a clean, immediately readjust your hands, and then go into a jerk. Second movement is a snatch. All right, Olympic lifting, why or why not? It increases rate of force development, triple extension. Why not? Some people say it's dangerous, but I think that just really depends on, does the athlete have a lot of mobility? Are they lacking that mobility? Does the coach know what they're doing? If you have a good coach and an athlete who has the movement ability necessary, I would not consider it dangerous. They actually have one of the lowest injury rates of all sports. Time-consuming, complicated, limited resources. Again, you guys heard me talk about outdated before. That just depends. All right, some alternatives. Most of you guys got this. As long as your alternatives could elicit triple extension, right? The extension of the ankles, knees, and hips. I counted it. If you just said deadlift, bench, and squat, that's not triple extension. If you said powerlifting movements down here, and you said deadlift, bench, and squat, but you said lift with intent or use it explosively, because I can do a speed deadlift that's going to get me that triple extension, where if I just did a regular deadlift, it's not. So you had to be specific as to that. All right, at what point do we teach landing mechanics? Before we teach people how to jump. They should know how to land before you let them go up in the air. 3 phases of the stretch shortening cycle. eccentric, amortization, concentric, right? Remember, if you pause at the bottom, you lose that stretch shortening ability, that potentiation for that explosive, elastic ability with the concentric, and then it's just straight raw power. All right, 4 factors affecting intensity. Most of you guys got this. Points of contact. If I use both of my feet, it's going to be easier than if I do a jump with one of my feet. So if we have a decrease in points of contact, it's more difficult. If I do the movement faster, that increase arrow, it's going to be harder. If the box is higher, it's going to be harder. So increase height of drill, more difficult. The heavier I am, the more difficult it's going to be. Or if I put a weight vest on, and you could argue relativity, but there are certain things with plyometrics at certain weights where we don't let people do certain height box jumps. We can get into that later on in the semester if you guys would like. All right, rate of force development. Most of you guys got it. I think a few of you guys weren't paying attention to these numbers here, and you switched ballistic train with heavy resistance. So here, the ballistic trained athlete is creating the most force at the beginning of the movement. The heavy resistance trained is creating the second most force. Untrained athletes create the least force. A couple of you guys put most. If you are untrained, you are not going to create more force than someone who's trained light resistance or heavy resistance. But at the end of the movement, here, let's say it's a squat, the heavy resistance trained athlete is the strongest. They can create the most force. They're just not the fastest at creating it here out of the hole. All right? And then the second strongest here is the explosive ballistic train, which makes sense. If we have an untrained individual, they should be lifting the lightest weights. All right, tempo. When I ask, please talk me through a deadlift at 3-1-3-1. A lot of you guys put points of performance for a deadlift, which is totally fine, but you neglected to address the 3-1-0-1. So as long as you addressed it, even if you gave me extra stuff that I didn't need, you guys got points for it. So this is a 3-second eccentric, 1 second at the bottom, 3-second concentric, 1 second at the top. Obviously, because it's an inverse movement, you would kind of start the pattern here. So 1, 2, 3 from the ground, big breath. 3, 2, 1, back down to the ground, big breath, and continue. But since I didn't have the amount of reps, you're just talking me through 1 rep. All right, what is triple extension? Extension of the knees, hips, and ankles. Those are the 3 joints that it matters for. Please put these in the correct exercise order that you teach someone a clean. All right, most all of you guys got this right. Deadlift is what you teach first. Then you teach the shrug. Then you add a little bit more, pull the elbows into it. You've got the high pull. Now you've got the clean. All right, what time would be the best time to implement strongman training? General preparatory phase. Why? Because it's the least specific. Think about the movement patterns that you're in. Even if you are working triple extension, it's not as specific to the sport because your body is in weird positions. Also, this sport requires a lot of muscular endurance, general conditioning. So those are other reasons to put it in the general preparatory phase. All right. We want to decrease muscle protein degradation. That's muscle protein breakdown. We don't want that, so we want to decrease it. The normal cortisol curve, almost everyone got, starts here, goes low. Cortisol is your wake up, get up, and go hormone. Should be the highest right around 6 a.m. and should be low at night. If it's high at night, you probably have dysregulated diurnal rhythm and you can't sleep at night. Testosterone is an anabolic hormone. Cortisol is catabolic. Which type of exercise leads to higher testosterone response? Hypertrophic. True, males typically have a greater growth hormone. And we want to increase muscle protein synthesis, which is the building of protein. Most of these questions that I'm going over came exactly from the PowerPoint or exactly from the worksheet that I gave you guys. How many grams of protein can your body process at once? 20 to 30 grams. A few of you guys put 15 to 25. And by a few, I mean 2 of you did. Since I overlapped that, I am going to give points back on that. Explain what a cluster set is and give an example comparing a cluster set to a normal set. Most of you guys did a good job. Some of you guys said that the rep scheme would be different. It should not be. It should be the same amount of reps. So a 1 by 10, or if I'm going to do a cluster, I could do a 1 by 5. Many of you guys put 1 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. So it's still equaled 10 reps. That's fine. This dot represents about a 10 to a 30-second rest in between. So some reasons you would want to increase or decrease time under tension are some ways that you can. You add tempo, whether it's in the concentric or the eccentric phase, or it's a pause at the bottom, you're increasing that time under tension. If you want to decrease it, you can decrease reps, increase again, add reps. When would it be advantageous to have lower points of time under tension? In season. You don't want to have too much tension on the body, increases more muscle damage, etc. Many of you gave other reasons, which is totally fine. Unless it didn't make logical sense at all, I think everybody got points on that. And then when do you want time under tension to be the highest? General preparatory phase, because you have the most time to recover during there. You're not competing at all. Your body can take the hit. All right, what is the goal of German volume training? Hypertrophy, and this is also best in the general preparatory phase. Tabata, if done correctly, should elicit 170% VO2 max. Most of you guys got it right. One round of Tabata is 4 minutes of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Tabata allows an individual to train aerobically and anaerobically. That is true. And there's no real difference between a 15-15 and a 20-10. Scientifically showing that is true, but with the exception of progression and tolerance. So if I have a newer athlete and I'm trying to introduce Tabata, I'm going to go 15-15. But if I want to progress this movement, you're still eliciting that 170% VO2 max, but I want to make sure that you can increase that time domain, what you're getting out of it. Name 3 of the 5 categories in the CrossFit pyramid. You have nutrition, metabolic conditioning, gymnastics, weightlifting and throwing, and sport. I asked you guys to define 4 of the 5 of these. If you defined all 5 and got one wrong, I still marked one wrong because I explicitly said only 4. You don't get extra credit for knowing 5. So AMRAP, as many rounds and reps as possible. EMOM, every minute on the minute. 10. It's a factorial. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of each exercise that's written after it. Descending pyramid could look like 50 reps of something, 40, 30, 20, 10. Buy-in is some type of a movement that you have to do before you start the workout. What types of athletes would benefit from skipping a catch in an Olympic lifting lift? Volleyball. Why? Because they don't have contact. They don't have to reabsorb force. They're not hitting people like they are in rugby and football. So being able to reabsorb the force of the clean isn't necessary. Not to say they can't benefit from doing full hand cleans in the off season, but if you're trying to lessen damage and you're trying to be more sport specific, basically they need to be able to pull that weight and then reabsorb their own force, not the force of additional people. So volleyball goes there. Most of you guys got that. Most common way to calculate max aerobic speed, 5 minutes. Okay, that kind of gave you the indication of 300 seconds. Most of you guys got that because 5 times 60 seconds is 300 seconds. Now the calculation to get 100% max aerobic speed, you take the amount of meters divided by the seconds, so 300 seconds, which gave you 4.08 ms. Graduate students, you had to calculate up to 120, so you just multiplied this times 120%, which gave you a lower number. All right, the following questions are about concurrent training. It is a combination of endurance and resistance training. Most all of you guys got that. This question I threw out because I wasn't very specific. Some studies show, and that could literally be any study. Most of you guys did put what I wanted to see. So I should have said some older studies show, so I could be more specific on that. So decrease in power, decrease in strength, decrease in hypertrophy. This is the answer here. Cycling, because it's been studied, which mode of training is typically going to cause less damage. I realized that 2 or 3 of you guys put underwater basket weaving, and I put that in there as a gimme, like, hey, it's obviously not this one. No one's tested this, but typically speaking, I can understand where you would think that it causes least damage, so I am going to throw that one out. So those of you who got cycling will get bonus points. And those of you who put underwater basket weaving, it doesn't harm you. We'll just call it even.